It had been 6 months since Sarah first asked for a piano. 6 months of me saying, "Soon, honey," or when work slows down a bit. But work never slows down when you're the only one keeping the lights on. After Martha passed, it was just the two of us, and the quiet in the house was a constant reminder of that. Sarah wanted to fill it with music. I think, in a way, we both needed that. But lessons, instrument rentals, it all adds up. The guilt of saying no, though that has a cost all its own. One night, scrolling through online ads on my phone, I saw it. The heading was just free piano. The picture showed this beautiful, old upright, the kind you see in turn-of-century photographs, its dark wood gleaming under a layer of dust. The post said it had to be gone by morning. I drove out there the next day to a part of town where the houses were starting to sag. The woman who answered the door was a wreck, her eyes wide and bloodshot. She didn't want my name, didn't want to chat. She just pointed at the piano and said, "Take it, please." As we were maneuvering it onto my truck, my hands slid along the baseboard, and my fingers traced a set of shallow carvings. They weren't floral or geometric. They were sharp, angular symbols I didn't recognize. For a split second, I felt a strange coldness, a static shock that prickled my skin. I pulled my hand back, but dismissed it. Just old, weird furniture. When I got it home, I managed to surprise her. The look on her face. It was like the sun coming out. That single moment of pure, unadulterated joy washed away months of exhaustion and worry. That first week was heaven. The house was filled with the clumsy plinking of scales and beginner exercises. It was the sound of normalcy, of a childhood moving forward. Her teacher, a stern older man named Mr. Albright, was floored. After 2 weeks, he called me. He said her progress was unprecedented. She was absorbing theory and mastering fingerings that should have taken a year. I just laughed, filled with a stupid, beaming pride. "That's my Sarah," I said. "She's a genius." I should have heard the caution in his voice. I should have wondered. But I just wanted to believe it. About a month in, the music began to change. The simple classical pieces were still there, but woven between them was something else. A new melody, one I'd never heard. It was hauntingly beautiful, but it felt heavy. It carried a profound sorrow, a melody that seemed to have been written in a forgotten language of grief. That's when the night started. The first time, I woke up with a jolt, my heart pounding. My bedside clock glowed. 3:03 a.m., and I could hear it, faintly, from downstairs. That same intricate, melancholic song. My first thought was the radio. Did I leave it on? Then I thought maybe Sarah was just too excited to sleep. I was so exhausted, the thought of getting out of my warm bed felt like climbing a mountain. I told myself I'd talk to her in the morning, tell her to keep the practicing to daylight hours. I rolled over, pulling the pillow over my head, and drifted into a restless sleep. The ghost of that melody following me into my dreams. "That was some concert you were putting on last night," I said, forcing a smile. "Must have gone on for hours." Sarah looked up from her cereal, her expression one of utter, vacant confusion. "What are you talking about, Dad?" I was tired. I slept all night. The chilling part was that I knew she was telling the truth. She believed it. Her eyes were clear of any deceit, which only made the situation more monstrous. That night, I lay awake, staring at the ceiling, my body thrumming with dread. I watched the clock on my nightstand tick past 3 o'clock. 3:01, 3:02. And as the numbers flipped to 3:03, it began again. Faint at first, then swelling to fill the house. It became our new, horrifying routine. Every single night, that clockwork performance. My life began to unravel. Sleep was a luxury I could no longer afford. I'd nod off in meetings, my coffee cup slipping from my numb fingers. I was becoming a ghost. One night, the fear of not knowing finally became greater than the fear of what I might find. I slipped out of bed and crept down the stairs, my own house feeling like a foreign, hostile country. I peered around the corner into the living room. The sight froze me in place. Sarah was there, bathed in the gray moonlight, her eyes sealed shut. She was playing, her body swaying in a perfect, fluid trance, a metronome of flesh and bone. She was a puppet, and something else was pulling the strings. For nights, that's all I could do. Watch from the shadows, a terrified spectator. But I knew there was more. I could feel another presence in that room, a cold spot in the air. I forced myself to go back, to push past the doorway, and I saw it. The shadow I'd glimpsed before was no longer just a shadow. It had resolved. It had a face. It was a pale, waxy mask, stretched taut over sharp bones into a wide, manic smile that showed too many teeth. And the eyes. The eyes were round, white orbs, webbed with a universe of red, bloodshot veins. They were fixed on the back of Sarah's head with a terrible, ecstatic intensity. I saw it, and the air left my lungs in a single, silent gasp. I had to prove I wasn't insane. The next night, I took my phone, my hands trembling violently. I stood in the hall, the music crashing around me, and hit record. I pointed it at the open door, at the space where I knew they both were. On the screen, there was nothing but a blizzard of gray static, and the recording, silence. It was a performance for an audience of one. A week later, it got worse. She started to hum along. Then that humming twisted, the sound curdling in her throat, and words came out, a language that felt ancient and sharp, full of clicks and guttural stops. It was the sound of something wearing my daughter's voice like a suit. That's how I spent my nights then, a prisoner in my own kitchen, listening to that piano and that voice, staring at the meaningless symbols I had copied from the instrument, knowing I was completely, utterly alone. My life had shrunk to the four walls of that house. Sleep was a forgotten country I could no longer visit. I spent every waking moment not at work, digging. My days were a frantic blur of searching online archives, local history forums, digitized newspapers, anything. I was looking for the symbols I'd sketched, for the history of the house where I'd found the piano, or the hollowed-out woman who had given it to me. I found a story, a tiny digital clipping from a 1928 newspaper about a concert pianist, a virtuoso who had simply vanished. His colleagues had spoken of his growing obsession with a unique instrument he claimed was his muse. The article mentioned he was last seen walking toward the old part of town, where I had picked up Sarah's piano. The music was constant now, not just at night. It had become the house's heartbeat, a never-ending, soul-grinding funeral dirge. I couldn't take it anymore. I went in there, screaming her name over the noise. And when she didn't look, I put my hands on her arm to pull her away. The instant I touched her, the music stopped. She turned, and her eyes, they weren't her eyes. They were lit from within by a sick, gray light. She threw me backward, not like a 15-year-old girl, but like something ancient and powerful. As I lay on the floor, she leaned over me and spoke a full sentence in that vile, clicking language, and the pure, unadulterated hatred in it felt like a physical blow. The outside world was a useless echo. I called my sister, my voice cracking with panic. I called my best friend, begging him to just come over. They heard the desperation and drew their own conclusions. You're burning out. It's been so hard since Martha died. They thought I was losing my mind. Their disbelief built a wall around me, brick by brick, leaving me trapped inside with it. That night, I decided the piano had to be opened. If it was the source, I would tear it apart. I went to the garage and found my old toolbox, my hands shaking as I pulled out a crowbar. I stood at the doorway to the living room, my heart hammering. The thing was there, standing behind her, its form clearer than ever before. It wasn't just a shadow. I could see the outline of a skull under its hat. The pale mask of its face stretched into that same wide, manic, blood-eyed smile. It saw me, and it beckoned, slowly curling one long, skeletal finger, inviting me in. I ignored it. I walked straight to the piano, jammed the crowbar into a seam near the pedals, and pulled with all my might. The old wood groaned and screamed like a living thing. A hidden panel I'd never noticed before popped open. I fell to my knees, my flashlight shaking, and pointed the beam inside. There were no strings, no hammers, no felt, just bones, dozens of them. The small, delicate bones of human fingers, yellowed with age, arranged in neat, tidy rows, like a collector's prized, horrific display. And as I knelt there, catatonic, staring into that tiny, private graveyard, the music swelled one last time, a triumphant, monstrous final chord. I threw the match and ran. The world erupted behind me in a wave of heat as I carried Sarah's limp body to the car. I didn't look back. I just drove, speeding away from the inferno, the sirens starting to wail in the distance. My only thought was the hospital. Maybe they could fix what had broken. Tears streamed down my face as I drove, a mixture of terror and grief. Then, a small voice cut through my despair. "Dad," I risked a glance. Sarah was looking at me. Her eyes. They were her eyes. Clear. Aware. "We won, honey," I sobbed, my voice choked with a joy so fierce it hurt. I burned it. "It's over." She smiled, a weak but real smile, and for one beautiful, perfect minute, we had one. The nightmare was over. I was laughing, crying, my heart ready to burst with relief. I looked in the rearview mirror, wanting to see the glow of the fire one last time, a symbol of our victory. But the glow was blocked. By him? The piano man. It was sitting in my back seat, its suit singed, its face smudged with soot. But its smile was wider and more triumphant than I had ever seen. It raised a hand in a slow, mocking wave. The joy in my chest turned to ice. The scream that escaped me wasn't human. It was the sound of a soul being ripped in two. I wrenched the wheel. The world became a violent, shrieking blur of metal and glass. My last sight was of Sarah's face, her brief moment of hope replaced by the same terror that consumed me. I woke up in a sterile room, every part of my body screaming in pain. My first word was her name. A detective sitting beside me didn't even blink. "Sir," he said, his voice flat, "you were the only one at the crash site." I told him everything. The fire I started. The daughter who woke up. The phantom I saw. It was a madman's story, a desperate, tangled lie to cover an unthinkable crime. They believed I'd set the fire to hide what I'd done to her, then crashed the car to finish the job. Now I'm here, alone, a monster to the world. A moment ago, I saw an ad online. The piano, charred, but whole. The caption read, "Fire sale, a real survivor." It gave her back to me. It let me feel hope for 60 seconds. It wanted me to feel her return, just so I could take her away again, forever.